Hello everybody, this is Nick Newman with RPG Mastery, and today's episode is just about Vampire the Masquerade and how this beautiful, beautiful game works. Okay, I've seen a lot of videos out there talking about mechanics, or talking about lore, but not talking about mechanics. And I know a lot of people out there that just love Vampire the Masquerade, but once you get to the rules and the math, people just They check out and then they're lost because they're sitting there wanting to play this game. But the rules, I'm so sorry. And oh my god, this is going to be just blasphemous to say. I love you, White Wolf. But it's really hard to find rules in your system because it's buried in fluff. And I love that fluff. Trust me, I love that fluff. But on the fly, it's kind of hard to figure this stuff out. But they made these games this way for a reason, because they want you to know that the mechanics are always secondary. The rules, the hard math, all that stuff, that's secondary to a good story. So if you, even after the end of this video, which I promise you'll be proficient with the rules if you follow this video to the end. But even if you don't understand that, they still want you to try to play and have a good time because the story is important. You can play campaigns without dice, which is crazy, but it exists. And people, I know a lot of you out there have probably done similar things where you role play or LARP or maybe you text people back and forth in school or have like an open chat room and do stuff like that. But that's the point. White Wolf back when they made this, they were about the story, and unfortunately that lost a lot of people just sitting around being like, I wish I knew how to play this. I know, for example, my sister really loved Vampire, and she bought the stuff when she was younger. This is like 10 years ago. What the sole reason I believe she didn't get to actually experience it to its full potential is that the rules system, the way they explained the rules, were convoluted. But I'm here to tell you, those rules are not complicated. They're just buried, and it's hard to make sense of it. But I got you guys. Okay, let's see. So the first thing that you have to know is that this game has a blood pool. Okay, so vampires, depending on their generation, it'll tell you in the rule book, depending on what generation you will have a number of blood pool points that you keep on your character when you eat people. It takes a point just to wake up in the morning every day, or not in the morning, I mean in the night, because you're a vampire. It takes a point just to wake up. And so you're going to start campaigns with story sessions starting with people with 9 points. You can bump that up again if you take a victim and you drink blood. And it'll tell you there's a section in the rulebook, but that's for game masters, so don't worry about it if you're a player. But there's a section that tells you how much blood you can get off of victims, and werewolves being particularly the most juicy. But you have a blood pool of 10, and you have disciplines, okay? In Vampire, discipline just means power, okay? Magic powers, okay? And you pay for these disciplines with your experience points, okay? Now, moving on towards the actual dice. You need D10 dice to play this game. D10s look like this. Most of you guys already know this. Just going through it for people who are brand new to Vampire. They're 10-sided dice, and every dot that you have on your character sheet, you should have a character sheet that looks something like this. And this is old Vampire the Masquerade. I'll have another video in the future about new Vampire the Masquerade and some of the changes, but they're not very crazy changes. If you understand this system, you will understand that system fairly easily, and they have a lot of cool new things that they added to the new Vampire the Masquerade. But we're just going to stick to the old stuff. So, you've got dots, okay? And every one of these dots that you have when you fill out your character, that means you get a dice, a D10 dice towards actions, okay? Let's say, for example, you're trying to seduce somebody, right? you're a sexy toreador vampire. You're out in the street and you're trying to seduce a victim and have them crawl into the back alleyway so you can sink your fangs into their juicy blood, or their neck. Get that juicy blood. the GM will ask you what you want to roll, and then this is the beauty of the system. This is what makes this system, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to hurt a lot of feelings out there, better than D&D, better than Pathfinder, better than most of these convoluted crap hole systems that you're going to see with a mess of math and pages that you have to crawl through and have your brain freaking be numb to get through. This is what makes this system masterful. And it allows you can take the rules here and you can transfer them to other worlds. Like, for example, I used the World of Darkness system to play Star Wars, the Star Wars system, where they weren't vampires, but they were Jedis, and they didn't have disciplines, but they had force feats. It makes sense. But they used D10s. We use D10s to solve all of our problems and to get the story moving and to have the skills set and all this stuff. And so every dot you have in a stat is a single dice towards a dice pool that you roll. Okay, and let's say you wanted to seduce that victim on the street. GM will have a difficulty set. The core rulebook says, and that's this guy right here. That's what it looks like. Okay, the core rulebook will say that most difficulties are going to be set to a 6. Okay, that means I'm going to roll a whole bunch of dice based on how many points I have, and I need 6s and above on those dice to succeed in what I want to do. So the GM will say, "How do you want to seduce this victim?" And I'll say, "I would like to use." Let's see. I will use performance, which is a social skill here, and I will use my, let's say, social here, charisma. Okay, and let's say I've got 3 in charisma, and I've got in my social skill or my performance skill, I've got a 2. So that gives me 5. Okay, that's how this game works. Usually, it depends on the GM, but I limit my players to 2 combinations of things with every roll that they have. I advise you as a GM to do that as well, unless you want to be generous. You don't want to be too generous, though, because it does take away from the element of the game when you're adding 3 or 4 or 5 skills to one thing. It convolutes it. But 2 makes a nuance of so many different variables and combinations and ways to do things. So, like, maybe I wanted to use, for example, this is crazy, maybe I wanted to use my athletics and I wanted to use charisma together to seduce somebody in the street. And I wanted to do that because maybe I wanted to show my muscular physique. Maybe I'm a male vampire trying to seduce a female, or either way, it doesn't matter. We're not going to get into gender stuff. But I wanted to flex my muscles. And then I wanted to do I wanted to just give him a good smile and a wink. So charisma and my athletics combined. Okay, I've got a new way of rolling just then by combining 2 completely almost unrelated stats. Let's say that pool ends up being 5 altogether. The GM will tell me the difficulty needed, and usually it's going to be a 6. But as a GM, you can go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to the top of something absurd I'm asking for. GMs can also ask for a certain number of successes that they need. So the GM may need 2 successes for this situation. I don't know why, but they work in mysterious ways. So we trust the GM when they say, "I need successes on 6 and I need 2 of them." Okay, great. So I roll my dice and let's say I've got 10, I've got 4, 3, and a 2. That's 5 dice there. I got 2 successes, and they were both above 6, which means that in the story, I successfully seduced this lady on the street, and then she followed me to the alleyway where I could devour her. That's how this whole system works, okay? Anytime you roll a 1 when you're rolling a handful of dice for your dice pool, that detracts from any success that you have, okay? So let's say that I did the same situation. This is a parallel universe where I tried the same thing. In this situation, I got a 10, I got a 1, I got a 1, I got a 2 and a 3. Okay, that's 5 dice. The first one cancels out my success of a 10. The other dice are not successes, and then I'm left with this 1. It means it was a critical failure. Maybe when I went to go flex for this lady or something like that, maybe I showed my fangs on accident, or maybe my eyes glue or in a certain way. I critically failed. So the GM can spin it any way that they wish to spin it. But I critically failed because I had ones. You do not want to roll ones on your dice pool rolls, okay? And that's basically how the game works. If you have a fight, if you have combat, and combat is where a lot of people get lost. It's not very complicated at all. What happens is you get all the people together that are in the combat, your NPCs and your players, and everyone who wishes to participate rolls initiative. And in this case, it's dexterity. And you can allow people to combine two things, but I only allow dexterity for an initiative roll. You have the players roll against each other in the NPCs. I would be rolling for my NPC. Let's say I had an NPC with a dex of 3. I roll 3 dice, and I got a 2, a 3, and I got 1 6. So he got a success. He got 1 success because his difficulty is set to 6. My other players at table are rolling like 8 dice, 6 dice, 3 dice, or whatever. Like maybe that guy at 8 had like a high dex build, like he put all his experience points in pumping up that dexterity. And he ends up getting 3 successes, and let's say the other 2 players end up getting 2 successes. Whoever's got the highest dex goes if there's a tie, okay? If not, you have him re-roll it again. So in this case, he goes first, and my NPC goes dead last because they only got 1 success. If you got crit fails, then you probably go very last into turn order and something bad happens to you, okay? So if you get more 1s than successes. After that, the players decide what they're going to want to do, how they're going to want to attack or damage each other, okay? And let's say my friend Jimmy is the one with the high dex. He wants to shoot me, okay? This is a fight that we're having. He wants to shoot me with a gun. And he rolls to, the GM will say, roll to hit. And he'll say, okay, I want to combine my dex, and I want to combine, let's say, my dexterity, and let me think of something really cool here. I'll say, oh, firearms is on there. Let's go dexterity and firearms together, okay? And so he'll roll, and that pool together is like 8, 9, 10, or 11 dice, okay? The GM will ask me if I have armor. Now, in this case, armor will only pump your points up to your difficulty score up to like 4, okay? By 4. Standard difficulty is 6 to hit me, but if I'm wearing full tactical SWAT gear or whatever, that should pump my score to, or the requirement to hit me up to 10. So let's say I am wearing full tactical gear and Jimmy is trying to shoot me from across the room, okay? He rolls his dice, and the GM will tell him, your successes are on 10s, because otherwise you're not going to be able to pierce Nick's armor. So he rolls, and let's say he gets 3 10s, miraculously out of that. Maybe he gets a 1, and then the rest is just blood, and it didn't pierce the armor. In that situation, the 1 would take away, so he got 2 successes. Now, you can have it to where just that enough story-wise, that did 2 points of damage to Nick, okay? And in Vampire, you have, no one has HP, okay? Everyone has the same set of health stats, and it's right here at the bottom of the sheet here, okay? All right, bear with me. I'm going to have this set in front of the screen so I can explain it. Whenever you take damage, let's say in that example, he got 2 successes, he deals 2 points of damage to me. Great. And it's a gun. It's a gunshot. But I'm a vampire, so gunshots only do bruising damage to me. I would put a slash on the top box and a slash through the second box. And that means that damage that I take can be regenerated if I use my blood or if I just take a little bit of time off, okay? Let's change that situation where he's firing at me with dragonfire rounds. Dragonfire rounds are pretty sweet. If you're running a campaign, a vampire campaign, use dragonfire rounds because they're just like shotgun shells that explode like a flamethrower, kind of. And they're really good at killing vampires. So let's say Jimmy shot me with dragonfire rounds. And we all know fire deals lethal damage to vampires, okay? In this case, if the 2 damage from the dragon fire would be X's in those boxes, the first 2 boxes, okay? That means that if you have an X in my box, I need a whole night to regenerate. That fucked me up really good. Like, that was insane damage. And even though I'm a kindred, I cannot heal it off right now. I'm going to have to go take a nap. And for every X of damage you get, it takes 1 night of your body to regenerate and fix itself, okay? If you're a human or a mage or something like that, and you get lethal damage, like a normal gunshot is lethal, they do X's of damage. You don't regenerate it unless you cast magic on yourself or you get a really great doctor to fix you, but that's probably not how it's going to work. World of Darkness, I'm going to warn you all right now, World of Darkness is not a system that, like Pathfinder, where you have battles that go on turn, back and forth, back and forth. You can, it can be like that if you've got 2 fighters or vampires that are really well matched and they have fortitude, so they can soak damage, and I'll get to soaking in just a minute. You can have epic battles like that, but usually in Vampire, it's like, boom, whoever goes first is going to execute the other person. It's very vicious, it's very political, it's scary, it's intense, but that's what I think the developers wanted. They wanted a very realistic world. When you get shot in the head, it is serious. And as you take damage on this health chart here, this modifier goes against your dice rolls. So, for example, if I went to hurt there, in this situation, I would have been hurt had I been shot with dragonfire rounds, meaning that that really scathed me up pretty good, and that means it messed me up so good that every time I roll dice from now on, I take a -1 penalty to doing that. Okay, very simple, and you go back and forth. If you want to attack multiple people at once, there's an accumulative upkeep cost to the roll. Okay, let's say Jimmy wanted to shoot me, and he wanted to shoot my friend Randy in the same turn, because for some reason the party's not getting along. We need to kill each other, which sometimes happens in D&D or Vampire or whatever. You know, you guys know this stuff happens. We need to kill each other. So Jimmy needs to shoot me, and he needs to shoot Randy with dragonfire rounds. Okay. Let's say Jimmy's got a dice pool of 10, and he's using the same thing, dexterity, and he's using his firearm score. So he's got those combined. The GM will ask, how many targets do you have? And he'll say 2. So the first target is going to cost, just for having 2 targets, it costs him 2 dice out of his pool, okay, right off the bat. If he would just focus on me, he wouldn't lose any dice at all. But he wants to be a badass, he wants to kill us both at the same time. 2 right there. And then every additional step that he takes an additional dice away, okay? So the GM, so in this situation, there are 2 steps to his, or 1 additional step to his turn, which would be shooting Randy. So he pays the 2 to shoot us both, and then the first step after me is Randy. He loses another dice. So he'll roll his first 8, or in this case it'd be 8 dice against me. And let's say he gets 2 successes, and they're dragonfire rounds. Again, I X off my box 2 X's, and now I'm hurt. He gets to Randy. Now he's going to lose 3 dice for shooting Randy, because Randy is the next character in the step. He pulls the trigger, and let's say this time he completely misses. Or he gets a botch. He botches, and he gets more 1s. In that case, the GM could reward Randy or something, or maybe his gun jammed or something silly happened. But that's how you do it. If there were 3 people, he would pay 3 dice from his pool, or 3 moves, if he was trying to shoot 3 people, he would pay 3 dice from his pool, okay? And then every consecutive action after the first loses an additional 1, okay? So he would shoot me, he would lose 3 dice, because I'm the first one. He'd move to Randy. In that roll, he rolls again, but he's going to lose 4 dice to the same pool. The next one is 5, 6, and 7. So it gets really difficult to do a lot of stuff at one time. I will say it's much better to take celerity if you want to do this stuff, because every point you have in the discipline celerity gives you an extra physical action. You can't do magic or anything, but if you had celerity, let's say you had a celerity of 2, you could activate the discipline, and that means you get 2 additional physical turns. So he could actually shoot me 3 times, and with full rolls. Okay, so celerity is crazy powerful. So I would advise that, taking that. Now, we're moving on to soak, okay? And I promise, we're almost through the whole system. Pat yourself on the back if you've listened to me this far, because you've got it now. You've got it. And I'll touch over everything really briefly once more and give a few more examples before we're finished. But we're almost done. Soak damage is when you have a character that has fortitude as a discipline. If you're a vampire that's got fortitude as a discipline, that means that every time you take damage, you can roll dice against your enemy. And for every success that you get, you completely ignore the damage that you would have normally taken, which is awesome. Awesome stuff. So in the same situation, Jimmy rolls 10 dice against me. He gets 4 successes, and he gets 10s, which is crazy because I'm wearing full tactical gear, remember? So my difficulty is set to 10. He rolls that against me, and he gets 4 successes. All I've got, I'm a vampire from, let's say, the Ventru clan, and one of my disciplines is fortitude. That means that I can combine stamina and fortitude together, and in the rulebook, that's what it says, stamina and fortitude. You can't do this if you don't have fortitude as a feat, or as a discipline. So I advise unlocking it. It's a very useful. Celerity and fortitude are very useful skills in Vampire the Masquerade. But in this case, I've got a total stamina and fortitude discipline score of 5. Okay, I rolled my 5 dice, and the GM's like, you only need 6s to soak this damage, and miraculously I get 4 6s, or maybe I get 6, and 8, a 10, and a 7. That means that I just completely ignored all the damage that he fired off at me. Every 4 successes didn't sink in because I soaked up that damage with my vampiric fortitude. It either the bullets bounced off from me, or I just absorbed it and ignored it. And I'm just, now it's my turn, I'm going to wreck his face. That is how soaking works. There are 2 things vampires can't soak, and one of them is fire. So if he was shooting me with dragon fire, I couldn't soak it unless I had a very high fortitude score of above 5, which unlocks special abilities like being able to soak sunlight and fire. And of course, you cannot soak sunlight. So if you're playing like an underworld campaign where vampires have UV rounds that they're shooting into each other, I can't soak that because it's sunlight. So it's really powerful stuff. So, oh my god, I'm so in love with this game. I can't get enough of it. But that's how you do it. Every time you want to roll something in the game, you combine 2 stats. That is your dice pool. You explain to the GM this is how it's working, or the GMs might argue and say that doesn't make any sense. Try to choose a different combination of things. That's where you push your creativity, and you can create some very epic situations and very, very unique and quirky moments by just combining different stats. And that's how the entirety of this game works. Let me check real quick. Some people will do something special with the 10s. Every time you get a 10, some GMs will allow you to do a reroll. And that means you keep the success that you initially got. Let's say I rolled 5 dice and I got 4 10s miraculously. That's 4 successes. But you can continue rolling like you do when you roll doubles in Monopoly. The GM could say, alright, you can continue to try and get more successes if you wish. And you can pick them up again, and you can roll, if you get 6s or 1s or whatever, they deduct or add more successes. So it's high risk and reward, but it's really fun. And willpower in the game. Willpower on your sheet is you can spend willpower points, because your willpower on your sheet is a pool. Let me take a look at it. It's at the bottom here. Willpower is a pool that the GM might need you to spend to do things like maybe you didn't want to rip that little kid's throat in the alley. You're a vampire. You're hungry. But everything in you, that humanity that you have left, is telling you, no, I'm not going to do it. The GM says, you're going to eat this kid. You can say, I spend a willpower point and I walk away. Awesome. And then the GM has to, if they're a good GM, they'll agree. And that's how the system is meant to be. Once that willpower goes to the very end and you start rolling dice to resist things, if it's at the very end, you either don't do it or you fail and you become compulsive and you give in to those dark desires and the things that the will of others around you. That's how willpower works. Humanity. Very simple. I'm going to break this down in such a simple way. You don't have to read the whole book to understand this. Humanity is just how far away you are from being a complete monster, okay? The lower your humanity score is, the more closer you are to becoming a feral beast, okay? Every vampire within them has a beast that's hungering for human blood, okay? And if that humanity goes all the way to the end, your character becomes an NPC. And they die, essentially. Like, story-wise, they die. They become feral, they go out in the woods, they go out in the streets, and they go on rampages until an elder kindred puts them down. Or a hunter or something does that. They become monsters. So, in this system, they actually have it to where the only way you can increase your humanity is by doing kind things, or by actually paying experience points, which can be rough. And a GM at any time can tell you lose humanity based on the things you do. Like, for example, if you met a little kid in the alleyway that's an orphan and is hungry, and you decide, haha, I'm just going to eat this kid, it'd be better off dead. The GM could look at you and be like, that's cold, lose a humanity point. And then you can argue all you want, but this is the point of the game. The real overarching point of the game is about how close you are to being a beast and how you push and fight your inner urges to try and change the world or to understand your origins or to be powerful. That's what it's about. Different paths in a book say basically that some people this doesn't work on. Like, I have a character in my campaign that's a psychopath, okay? So he doesn't use humanity. He would use one of the other paths. In this case, I just invented a path, and I called it the path of fear. Other alternate paths always have some kind of consequence and some kind of rule. So the path of humanity is very common sense. Do kindness to others. Don't be selfish. That's how you get more humanity. The more selfish you are, the lower that score goes until you become a feral monster. Or if you get your humanity all the way to the top, you're the monk on the mountaintop who is transcendent and is aware and in tune with his spirituality and his curse and all this. And it leads to some people call Golconda. And Golconda is in the game, you probably know this lore already. Golconda is like this position of transcendence where the beast inside you is aligned with your humanity, so they're in tune. You are one with all of your inner selves, and that sometimes gives special supernatural powers, like the ability to walk in sunlight and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But that's humanity in a nutshell. And paths other than humanity are require things like either you're part of a code or some kind of system. Maybe you're a monster. Maybe you belong to the Sabbat and your code is to cause harm. Those people lose their path points and get closer to becoming basically lost NPCs, kindred that have no goals anymore, or become feral monsters and cannot be reasoned with anymore. They're lost. But for example, my friend Evan is playing a character that's a psychopath. And so you cannot keep the path of humanity makes no sense to a psychopath, but a path of power makes sense to a psychopath. So in this situation, he gets points. He gets path points towards the path of fear every time he's stalking a victim or he's trying to push himself and gain more power. Anytime he helps another individual and it detracts from him, he loses points from his path, until eventually he'll get lost and he won't even know who he is anymore. He won't know what the reason he's living for is, or he won't feel like he's part of a society again. And if his path goes all the way to 0, he'll go out in the middle of the woods or go on a rampage and just give up, or he'll kill himself. This is a very dark game, so keep that in mind. That's what humanity is. Okay, my friends? That's the game. Roll 2 sets of dice pools to do things. Successes on a 6. Unless the GM says otherwise. GMs, if you're listening, you can also deduct points, or deduct dice pool points from players based on difficulties in the situation. Like if you're a sniper on a rooftop, and you're a vampiric sniper, and you're trying to snipe out a human that you've been hunting or something, but it's raining outside, and the wind is really terrible. The GM could say it's windy, lose a dice from your pool, or it's cold and it's wet, so you can't see very well, lose another dice. So they had a 10 altogether, but the elements against them pushed their pool down to an 8. And the GM on top of that can be like, this, what you're trying to do is so crazy. They're so far away and they're so finite and you can't see them very well, even with your special Auspex powers. The difficulty on this one's going to be an 8, okay? And that's how you do it. A little side stuff. You can get out of the video now if you want. Please comment, like, and subscribe if you're ready to leave at this point. But any of this, I advise, if you're doing a vampire game, to do chips for blood pool points, okay? It gives something tangible to the players at the table, for one, and it allows you to be able to monitor their spending of their blood pool without asking to look at sheets constantly. And it creates a need for you don't need to trust your players if you're exchanging blood chips. So in this case, every red one I've got is a single point of blood. Every blue one is like a 4 points of blood. And I start the game out by asking players, like, what's your blood pool currently? I give them the chips, and then they spend it, and I give them chips based on if they eat people or if they are using their vampire magic. So I really advise using some form of, like, tokens or something, or you can keep the tally on your own sheet if you're game mastering or storytelling. Let me check. Let me see, because this videos are all raw and unedited. I just talk to you guys like you're friends of mine, and I do see you as friends of mine. If you're watching this, we're both vampire fans for sure. Let's see. As far as I know, I have covered everything other than Frenzy, it looks like, okay? Frenzy, let's see. If your blood pool, 1 point per discipline used, yeah. If your blood pool gets too low, you can enter Frenzy. Or if there's fire around you or something that causes you to panic, you will roll dice to resist Frenzy. Now, your Frenzy dice cannot be greater than the amount of blood you have. So if you have 4 blood pool point dots and the GM has you roll to resist a frenzy, then that means that you can, whether you're willpower or is it willpower? It's willpower, self-control, instinct. There's a little section here, self-control / instinct. That even if it's higher, you can't go past your blood pool. So if you're a vampire, your willpower, you are a slave to how full you are. And if you fail, bad things happen if you fail your frenzy roll. And I believe you can pay willpower points outright to resist frenzies. So that is Vampire in a nutshell. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Write comments if you have more questions. I will be making videos like this for Mage the Mage the Ascension or Awakening, Werewolf the Requiem, all the White Wolf good stuff, okay? Changeling the Lost, Changeling the Dreaming, I'll have this. But if you understand the basic mechanics that I just laid out for you, you'll be able to play any of those systems, these D10 systems, without fear of being wrong or fear of the math, because as you can see, the math is not very difficult in this system at all. And if you want to advance your game, you can have guns deal damage dice. So for example, let's say Jimmy had a rocket launcher. He was shooting me with a rocket launcher. He got 2 successes on the rocket launcher, but as a game master, you're like, rocket launchers in my game deal D20s of damage. Which makes sense. He got 2 successes, he rolls 2 D20s, and let's say he got 16. He does 16 points of lethal damage to me. I'm dead. Unless I can soak it. Which the GM, it's up to the GM's discretion to see if they want to change how much you can soak or how much you can't soak. In my situation, I would have it to where they would roll before damage to see if he soaked any of it, and then have it the story be like, oh, you just got hit by the edge of the explosion and the searing flame just touched you, and then in that case I'd be like, roll me a frenzy. A check to see if you can overcome that urge that fight or flight urge that the flames triggered. But if they had fortitude, they could just soak that damage and so on and so forth. Thank you, my friends. I had just got 101 subscribers, so I really felt like I needed to put this video out to thank everybody and to do more mechanic-based videos. There's going to be a whole bunch in the future, and I thank you so much for watching if you got this far. Comment, like, and subscribe for some more Vampire, more D&D, more Pathfinder, all that good stuff. Thank you so much, and remember to stay calm and roll 20.